I'm Buckner, your economics instructor. And this video, I'm going to show you how to calculate and identify in a graph consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total surplus for a competitive market. So first, consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is a measurement of the benefit someone gets from consuming a product minus the price that they paid for it. So our formula, straightforward for consumer surplus, is equal to benefit minus price. Okay. So for example, let's say this competitive market is for cups of coffee, right? And in that market, the first cup of coffee purchased, based on our demand function, maybe somebody values that at $10. Okay? But they don't pay $10 for that cup of coffee. Maybe the market price for a cup of coffee is $4. For that one cup of coffee, the consumer surplus that one consumer would get is the difference between the price they paid, how much they value it, and the price they paid. So 10 minus 4, which gives us 6. Now, in a competitive market, you're going to have lots of units purchased, not just that first one. You're going to get where your supply function, your demand function intersect, that equilibrium point. That equilibrium quantity, we're going to be our market quantity, that's the number of units that are going to be purchased by all of these consumers. So if you want to measure the total consumer surplus that is going to be derived by all of the purchasers of all of those cups of coffee up to the market quantity, it's a simple triangle. And the triangle is going to be bound by the demand function on the top, the price, the market price on the bottom, and the y-axis on the left. So it's going to look like this, right here. That blue triangle right there represents the consumer surplus, all the additional benefits the consumers get beyond the price they pay. Now, second thing to look at is going to be producer surplus, right? The seller's perspective. So as a calculation, producer surplus is the difference between the price that they charge for their product and the minimum price that they'd be willing to accept for it. So again, going to this first cup of coffee sold, we do know from our equilibrium point, the market price of that first cup of coffee is going to be $4. But let's say from the seller's perspective, the supplier's perspective, the minimum price they'd be willing to accept and still make and sell that first cup of coffee, let's say that might be $3. Okay? So for that one cup of coffee, the producer surplus is going to be equal to the price that they actually sell it for minus the minimum acceptable price, which in this I'm saying is $3, right? So for this one cup of coffee, the difference between 4 and 3, 1 is their producer surplus for that one cup of coffee. Now, we know they're going to sell the market quantity number of cups of coffee based on our equilibrium point. So the producer surplus from all of the units that they're going to sell is also going to be a triangle shape. And that triangle is going to be bound also by the price, but then by the supply function and the y-axis. So the producer surplus is going to be this green triangle, while the blue triangle on the top is going to be our consumer surplus. Now, our last measurement that we're going to get from this graph is going to be total surplus. Total surplus is a measurement of the total benefits society gets from a transaction, right? So if a transaction has both a buyer's side and a seller's side, the total surplus is going to look at the consumer or buyer's benefit, their surplus, plus the producer side, the producer surplus. So total surplus as a calculation equals consumer surplus plus producer surplus. For just that first cup of coffee, the producer surplus was this gap right here, $1. For that first cup of coffee, the consumer surplus is this gap right here, the 10 minus 4, which is $6. So the total surplus for that one cup of coffee would be the 6 plus the 1, or 7, right? The sum of the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. Now, if you want to measure the total surplus for both the buyers and the sellers in a competitive market, meaning that the price is set at equilibrium, you just add the area of the blue consumer surplus triangle with the green producer surplus triangle. Bring us back to our formula. Total surplus equals consumer surplus plus producer surplus. Now, important to note at the end of this video, this is what you see in a competitive market. Now, if you were to look at a measurement of consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total surplus for a monopoly market, you're going to see something different.